Beauty is no quality in things themselves. It exists merely in the mind which contemplates them, and each mind perceives a different beauty. There is no such thing as freedom of choice, unless there is freedom to refuse. The greater part of mankind may be divided into two classes, that of shallow thinkers who fall short of the truth, and that of abstruse thinkers who go beyond it. The most lively thought is still inferior to the dullest sensation. What a peculiar privilege has this little agitation of the brain which we call thought. Be a philosopher, but, amidst all your philosophy, be still a man. But such is the nature of the human mind, that it always lays hold on every mind that approaches it. When we reflect on the shortness and uncertainty of life, how despicable seem all our pursuits of happiness. It's when we start working together that the real healing takes place. It's when we start spilling our sweat and not our blood. But the life of a man is of no greater importance to the universe than that of an oyster. To hate, to love, to think, to feel, to see, all this is nothing but to perceive. A purpose, an intention, a design, strikes everywhere, even the callous, the most stupid thinker. When the critic has no delicacy, he judges without any distinction, and is only affected by the grosser and more palpable qualities of the object. It is harder to avoid censure than to gain applause. Let these generous sentiments be supposed ever so weak, let them be insufficient to move even a hand or finger of our body. No amount of observations of white swans can allow the inference that all swans are white, but the observation of a single black swan is sufficient to refute that conclusion. We speak not strictly and philosophically when we talk of the combat of passion and of reason. This belief in futurity loosens in a great measure the ties of morality, and may be for that reason pernicious to the peace of civil society. Accuracy is, in every case, advantageous to beauty, and just reasoning to delicate sentiment. In vain would we exalt the one by depreciating the other. The richest genius, like the most fertile soil, when uncultivated, shoots up into the rankest weeds. To philosopher and historian, the madness and imbecile wickedness of mankind ought to appear ordinary events. A propensity to hope and joy is real riches, one to fear and sorrow, real poverty. The truth springs from arguments amongst friends. Character is the result of a system of stereotyped principles. It is possible for the same thing both to be and not to be. The identity that we ascribe to things is only a fictitious one, established by the mind, not a peculiar nature belonging to what we're talking about. The great end of all human industry is the attainment of happiness. A wise man proportions his belief to the evidence. It is seldom that liberty of any kind is lost all at once. Slavery has so frightful an aspect to men accustomed to freedom that it must steal upon them by degrees, and must disguise itself in 1,000 shapes in order to be received. A propensity to hope and joy is real riches, one to fear and sorrow real poverty. Nothing appears more surprising to those who consider human affairs with a philosophical eye than the easiness with which the many are governed by the few, and the implicit submission with which men resign their own sentiments and passions to those of their rulers. A man acquainted with history may, in some respect, be said to have lived from the beginning of the world, and to have been making continual additions to his stock of knowledge in every century. When men are most sure and arrogant, they are commonly most mistaken, giving views to passion without that proper deliberation which alone can secure them from the grossest absurdities. Between married persons, the cement of friendship is by the laws supposed so strong as to abolish all division of possessions, and has often, in reality, the force ascribed to it. Eloquence, at its highest pitch, leaves little room for reason or reflection, but addresses itself entirely to the desires and affections, captivating the willing hearers and subduing their understanding. No testimony is sufficient to establish a miracle, unless the testimony be of such a kind that its falsehood would be more miraculous than the fact which it endeavors to establish. Heaven and hell suppose two distinct species of men, the good and the bad, but the greatest part of mankind float betwixt vice and virtue. Any pride or haughtiness is displeasing to us merely because it shocks our own pride and leads us by sympathy into comparison, which causes the disagreeable passion of humility. The Christian religion not only was at first attended with miracles, but even at this day cannot be believed by any reasonable person without one. Where ambition can cover its enterprises, even to the person himself, under the appearance of principle, it is the most incurable and inflexible of passions. This avidity alone, of acquiring goods and possessions for ourselves and our nearest friends, is insatiable, perpetual, universal, and directly destructive of society. The sweetest path of life leads through the avenues of learning, and whoever can open up the way for another, ought so far to be esteemed a benefactor to mankind. Everything in the world is purchased by labor. He is happy whom circumstances suit his temper, but he is more excellent who suits his temper to any circumstance. Nothing is pure and entire of a piece. All advantages are attended with disadvantages. A universal compensation prevails in all conditions of being and existence. Anticipation of pleasure is, in itself, a very considerable pleasure. Generally speaking, the errors in religion are dangerous, those in philosophy only ridiculous. A miracle is a violation of the laws of nature, and as a firm and unalterable experience has established these laws, the proof against a miracle, from the very nature of the fact, is as entire as any argument from experience can possibly be imagined. Beauty, whether moral or natural, is felt more properly than perceived. Time is a perishable commodity. The heart of man is made to reconcile the most glaring contradictions. Morals excite passions and produce or prevent actions. Reason of itself is utterly impotent in this particular. The rules of morality, therefore, are not conclusions of our reason. It is an absurdity to believe that the deity has human passions, and one of the lowest of human passions, a restless appetite for applause. The supposition that the future resembles the past is not founded on arguments of any kind, but is derived entirely from habit. All this creative power of the mind amounts to no more than the faculty of compounding, transposing, augmenting, or diminishing the materials afforded us by senses and experience. Curiosity, or the love of knowledge, has a very limited influence, and requires youth, leisure education, genius, and example to make it govern any person. The imagination of man is naturally sublime, delighted with whatever is remote and extraordinary, and running without control into the most distant parts of space and time, in order to avoid the objects which custom has rendered too familiar to it. While we are reasoning concerning life, life is gone. The minds of men are mirrors to one another, not only because they reflect each other's emotions, but also because those rays of passions, sentiments, and opinions may be often reverberated and may decay away by insensible degrees. Mankind are so much the same, in all times and places, that history informs us of nothing new or strange in this particular. Its chief use is only to discover the constant and universal principles of human nature.